If you do a picture search on Google vis-a-vis Trotto, you'll get a fair number of images of Italian horse racing. But the best I can seemingly do is hitch up the old Pianosaurus. The Trotto is apparently a trot dance hailing from Italy, specifically medieval Italy, although not quite this early. Consensus is it's from the old district of Tuscany. Beautiful countryside, as you can see. Tuscany is also the home of Florence, many mountainous areas. Guido d'Arezzo is associated with Tuscany way back in the 900s. Here's the Pisan Cathedral, which dates from the 1000s, Leaning Tower from about 1300 in the background. Great mountains, too. And Fibonacci of the series, right, of mathematical fame. It's a time of relative barbarism. Here are the Florentines going at it with the Sienese in 1260, running around Tuscany. It's quite possible that whoever composed the Trotto was a direct contemporary of Dante of the Inferno. Of course, that depends on when exactly the Trotto was written. It survives in only one copy in the British Museum. Those British were notorious for taking things from Southern Europe and the Middle East and making them their own. Yes, the manuscript is in the British Museum in the colorfully named Ad MS 29987 manuscript. And nice that in this Wikipedia article, it's the Trotto itself that is shown as the exemplar with a saltarello just below, which is a leap dance, saltare. And of course, as the Wikipedia article says, it's a medieval Tuscan manuscript, and that's not to be confused with Tuscan Raiders. Oh no, those George Lucas Star Wars characters are actually Tusken. So that clarifies a lot of issues with those sand people and their banthas, yes? But here's a more readable version of the Trotto manuscript in, shall we say, contemporary notation. This is as found in a book simply imaginatively called Medieval Music by Edwin Hoppen. And notice this has been transcribed into 6/8 time. It is in G Dorian. And that B flat was in the original notation. This is a kind of dance with first and second endings. They were known as ouvert et clos. In this manuscript, it's Italian, it's aperto and chiesa. And it's a series of what they call puncta, or parts. The first part is the first two staves. Comme ça. I wonder if we can do it. So let's take it over to the old Pianosaurus, shall we? Well, I can't play the Trotto in G Dorian because the B flat is just, shall we say, painted on. That's what Schroeder used to say in Peanuts. Somebody asked him, Schroeder, I noticed that you play all this complex music by Beethoven, and yet the black notes of your piano are just painted on. His reply was, well, I practice a lot. So we can play it, though, in D Dorian. Never hits the upper D. Instead, just to so. Do, do, so, do, so, so. Woo! Do, do, so, fa, me, re, do, te, do, re, te. Do, re, la, re. And there's your la, finally. So pentatonic for quite a while. Right? Then here's the hexatonic with the te. We still don't know whether it is Dorian or minor until right here. La, re. And if we had the le, re, we'd have a tritone there. It would sound pretty gnarly. Okay, and second phrase. And there's a question about rhythm there, too. So here we go. Do, do, so, fa, me, do, te, te. Do, re, la, re, right? And then go back and do it again. Do, do, so, fa, me, do, te, te. Do, re, fa, so, fa, me, te, do. And notice the variant readings of that. And there are persuasive arguments either way in the original manuscript. Then there are second and third and fourth renditions, contrast sections. Supposedly, they jump back to there each time. But there are questions about that. And then there's even a fifth part like that. And I put them in boxes because the typical performances of these pieces make it much more overtly what we would now call a rondo. And maybe this is amongst the earliest, if not the earliest, rondo form. So you've got an A here, a B, it goes back to A, goes to C, then back to A. And that would be the reduced form of the rondo, the slimmest. You'll hear in our featured recording by the Florilegium Musicum de Paris that they expand this form. Their reading of this manuscript is pretty close. They do not do this rest. And I got to take you back to the original score. Check this out. If there's a rest, it's this little glyph right here, this little smudgerino. And according to mensural notation of the time, that may be a rest. And here we go with kind of nerd music stuff. Here's some stuff about note values. And this is kind of mind-boggling. There is a reduction of, is this sort of a deflation or is this an inflation of musical note values? Originally, in about 100 years before this manuscript, you had maxima, longa, and breve notes. And they correspond, the breve, which means brief, corresponds to the contemporary double long whole note, the semibreve, and the British still say semibreve. We say whole note. Evidently, we get our terminology from Germans. It's a translation over. And then notice the minim, that would be mini. It wasn't even back there. It is in this manuscript. That would correspond to what we call the half note. And the semi-minim, it started with a little hatch there, but eventually lost it. And it becomes the quarter note. And then these guys, eighth notes and sixteenths. So that's what you have. And in this manuscript, it seems like there are no rests. Although that little smudgy poo might be. Ah, yes. So there's some rests. And so that little slash there could be half rest. But even if it is a half rest, since the basic pulse was in whole notes, that may not be there. And here is another reading. Isn't this music nerd notation stuff? That's the original one we were using. The unfortunate thing is I don't particularly like either of these. All right, it's a little hard to focus in, so let's really zoom in there. And you'll note that in this version, we do not have any rests after that. And the Florilegium Musicum takes this option of no rest. And why is this such a big deal? Why I'm obsessing over this? Well, we'll see in just a second. However, this version, there's there it is. Doesn't have that decorative figure here. And notice there's actually a little glitch. The other version had da da da. They had that as part of play each time. With the second time through, so da 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 da. That's the recording we're going to have. This just has it as da 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 without using that. Once again, why are we obsessing? Well, because what does the music actually sound like? How are you going to do? And as you can see with this version, actually both versions, we have a statement of a new contrast theme, but then going back to sort of the tag end without the front end. And then it expands, and it expands even more and goes higher. But there's time to tell about that too. What are the devastating and wonderful consequences of not having a rest after there? Observez-vous. If I put a downbeat on every other one of these 3/8 measures, and this is notated in 3/8, the other one was in 6/8. You wouldn't have a bar line there in 6/8. You get this bum ba da 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 bum ba da 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 ba da 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 bum ba da 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 dum ba bum ba da 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 da. Notice you get a little hiccup, and so you actually do have. Sorry about that. This is a 3/8 measure, whereas all these other guys are kind of like 6/8. And the Florilegium Musicum does it. To my knowledge, I haven't found a single other version that does it. Everybody else kind of squares it off as bum ba da 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 dum ba da da da. In fact, looking at the other version of it, let's get that out of the way. There we go. Notice if we put the rest in, it's actually much less rhythmically exciting. Bum ba ta 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 tum ba ta 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 tum bum ba ta 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 tum ba ta yum ba ta 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 ta. Boring, as as my step granddaughter said when she entered her first day of elementary school. Wasn't a good idea there. So, as we say, in the manuscript, there does seem to be a justification, possibly, for that. It could just be a smudge. There's an old tale of some scholar who was looking at the works of Mozart and evaluating the dots and the strokes in Mozart, and were they different articulative marks? And this guy, his name was probably not Mark, he worked at this for years, and he finally decided that dots in Mozart was when Mozart was not in a hurry, and when they were slashes, he was just writing fast. Of course, the Florilegium Musicum could have made that choice to ignore or just not do a rest, given the practices of mid-20th century rhythmic permutations, as found in Stravinsky's Histoire du Soldat, the March Royale movement in particular, also at the end of his piano concerto, done a decade later, and Karl Orff in the Tanz section of Carmina Burana. Okay, the B section, which corresponds to the secunda, terza, and quarta parts. Instead of on do, we're at fa, me, re, fa, so fa, me, do, te, do. And you'll hear that on flute each time it occurs. And then the fifth part, which corresponds to what we'll say is C, back to the vielle, which has the main melody at the beginning. And you'll hear the main melody on vielle the first time, and then the ensemble, shall we say tutti, on the second statement of the main theme, with both ouvert et clos endings. And then the third theme, back to the vielle. And notice we're up even higher. Very typical of sectional pieces to have contrast areas, choruses versus verses, etc., to be at higher pitch levels or distinctively lower pitch levels. In this case, we are at an upper do, and so we've had fa, and now we're do, te, la, so, and notice the second theme, and with the exception of that little tag end of the first theme, do not have the la. We have la many times here. So we have do, te, la, so, la, te, do, and then that repeats several times, as you see, and then back to the main theme. Instrumentation in this recording, I was able to track down the back of the record jacket online today. Wadu. This is on side 2. It's the last cut. What does it say? Band 6 there. They do this as a segue from Girard de Bonnet, Praise Glorious, Glorious King. It's a great setting of that too, but gotta focus. The Trotto will be performed by a soprano vielle, which is a fairly high violin type instrument, Iranian flute, cornet with mouthpiece. You got that brass instrument. It almost sounds like a French horn at times. Soprano bombarde, which is an oboe-like instrument, chimes, and percussion. And that percussion is, well, it sounds like several percussion instruments, like a bass drum instrument, and also a pressure drum, which can change pitches like a mini timpani and somehow maybe akin to tabla or dumbek, darabeka in Middle Eastern traditions. And of course the whole sound of this is kind of like a Middle Eastern Middle Ages band. And as to whether there's really any evidence of that, well, we've seen certainly dance music having. And do we show that dance image? This dance image, which you've seen on the blog, is actually a later image, not too much later, but say around 1400. And it's an illustration from actually an Arabic health manual. So it pays to be healthy and to get out there and dance. But as you can see, we at least have a shawm-like or bombard-like instrument and a bagpipe there. And as to whether you had these comparatively larger ensembles, that's a question, isn't it? The form of this rondo definitely expanded from the abaca or even the abacaba. We've got a double A there, then B, A, C, then A. That would be enough of a rondo, wouldn't it? But then repeating the B, and then after an interval repeating the C, and the letters down below to signify the first A is on the vielle, the second A, and all ensuing A's are tutti, the whole group, tutti frutti, all flavors. Then the B is always on the flute, and the C on the vielle, reflecting the opening. And so we almost have a rondo-ish use of the solo vielle there, notice with the final tutti. All very clever.